So let's go now. NFC West, first round, first overall quarterbacks, continuing that narrative. Cam, Jameis, Kyler Murray, Arizona. Do we like what Cliff Kingsbury has built for Kyler in year one?
Yeah, we love their draft, Mike. I mean, it was like they drafted off our board. Man.
It'll be fun. I mean, they didn't do a ton along the offensive line. Offensive line could still be an issue, but you can eschew some of that with a little more play action, a little more roll in the pocket, a little more, with just a mobile quarterback can help out that offensive line. And they did address it at right tackle, at guard, and health will be an issue as well. But a ton of playmakers on the outside, and I just want to know what this offense looks like because they needed a tight end. Didn't really take a tight end until Mr. Irrelevant. They just loaded up on wide receivers, and Cliff Kingsbury's offense was a lot of four wide in college, and not a lot of teams run a lot of four wide in the NFL. But if anyone's going to change it, it might be Cliff Kingsbury.
That's what I'm fascinated to see is just how close to the college offense. We know what Cliff Kingsbury's offense looks like at Texas Tech. How close to that does this Arizona Cardinals offense come? Because the NFL has obviously seen these crazy spread systems in college for years, and they've sort of trended in that direction, but nobody's just gone step one right to the end game and seen what that looks like. So is Cliff Kingsbury going to do that, or how far along that path are we going to see this offense look? Because with Kyler Murray there and everything he can do, with a lot of receiving talent now with the guys they've added in the draft, they've got, the personnel is there for them to do something pretty spectacular if they go all the way with that system. And then how interesting that would be just to see how well it works.
I think realistically, though, you're looking at Arizona not completely turning things around in year one. As much as we love the draft, we keep saying you can't completely rely on rookies right away. They're not just going to step in and all be stars. But having Andy Isabella as a deep threat, having Hakeem Butler as a bigger type of weapon, having Byron Murphy added to their zone-heavy scheme on the back end, we love all of those fits. Maybe it does take a couple of years, but I think a roster that was among the league's worst added just so much talent in this rebuilding process.
Well, you mentioned earlier, Mr. Irrelevant. You look at him, Caleb Wilson, he still had one of the highest graded games we've ever given to a college tight end, and then one of the higher graded seasons we've ever given to a college tight end. He's got that ability even to be the last pick overall. And they even went there, we liked Jalen Thompson, who they just got in the supplemental draft as well. So it almost is like they're using PFF a little bit. They do have the questions inside. But a guy that I think we all still really like, he's joined by a former teammate there in Byron Murphy, Budda Baker, guy who can move all around the defense. So it's necessary when you go up against a guy like Jared Goff, but mainly Sean McVay with the Rams at least twice this season. Did the Rams get better this year? Or are we looking at a team that's going to regress back to sort of not maybe the best team in the NFC?
I think their biggest question mark is how that offense develops in year two. We've seen systems come into the league in the past, have hit the ground running, and then they didn't evolve and they stagnated, and they weren't able to take the next step once NFL defenses figured out how to at least limit what they do. The Rams, they do a lot of things on offense that should always work, so it shouldn't get immediately found out. But we started to see towards the end of the year that NFL defenses figured out how to at least force them to adjust, to go to a plan B. And when that happened, it didn't even look like plan B existed, let alone that it was successful. So I think this is a big offseason for Sean McVay to prove that there's a version 2.0 of this offense, and that it can continue to take the league by storm. And also, as a byproduct of that, it's a big season for every other team that just hired a Sean McVay disciple, because it's going to have the same problem, right? Either if NFL defenses have started to figure out how to slow down this offense, there's a lot of worried coaches out there.
And it is tough because there's not a lot of positions on this roster, just purely on paper, where you can argue they got better here. Maybe wide receiver, Cooper Kupp coming back, yes, I'd say they got better there, but pretty much every other sort of positional group, it's difficult to make a case for they got better there, which if you didn't get better somewhere, injuries tend to strike, things happen to where you probably got worse. So it might not be, you might see some regression. I still think they're a very good, still a very talented roster, offensive construction. I think the scheme is still going to work to some degree, but I think you could see they are a pretty ripe regression candidate with all those things considered.
Yeah, O-line has some question marks now. We don't know Joseph Noteboom. He's coming in to play Brian Allen. We just don't know what we're going to get from some of those guys. An O-line that is pretty well protected by the scheme as far as the pass game goes, but they are fantastic in the run game, or they have been fantastic in the run game, because we keep telling you, hey, Todd Gurley's production, all their production is based off the scheme and the run blocking. Will we be able to say that a year from now? Will these guys be able to run block at the same level that they did the last couple of years? Plus Andrew Whitworth, closing in on 40 years old, as great as he's been, at some point he's got to fall off the cliff too, right? I mean, don't these old guys all have to regress at some point?
I think one thing the offensive line does have for them, though, they get to go up against the best defensive player in a long, long time, and Aaron Donald at practice during OTAs, during training camps.
That's not making them any better.
Yeah.
Why not?
Confidence.
Getting your ass kicked every day.
But come on.
Best player
You
in
gotta
the
think
NFL, Aaron Donald.
Right, and you get to go up against him. You get to learn a thing or two. He teaches everybody whenever he's on the field. So, Sam, you're on record actually just a couple days ago by mentioning he should be the MVP.
No.
Not MVP.
I said he was the best player in the NFL and wasn't particularly close to number 2. I'm pretty sure I never mentioned MVP.
Just you don't even believe in MVP.
Correct, right.
Yeah.
It seems an unlikely thing for me to have said.
Yeah.
I mean, Donald is the best player in the game. He's a dominant force. If anything, he's pushing his level, his baseline, even higher as the years go on. I mean, we're watching something pretty absurd, pretty spectacular. We're seeing guys have, the best season from a defensive tackle in a decade that wasn't by Aaron Donald, and nobody notices because Donald is just that much better in and of himself. He's absolutely incredible. It's not to say that he will take over every single game. You look at the Super Bowl, there are ways to limit the impact that Aaron Donald has, but you need to actually scheme to do it. You can't just hope that he's not going to show up one day, because that's not going to work.
They're strong in the right places, though, ultimately. Marcus Peters, if he could bounce back a little bit, he wasn't great. Aqib Talib, though, when Talib was on the field, that defense was completely different. He's still a top-end corner. Plus, they had guys like David Long that we liked, Taylor Rapp, Eric Weddle. So they're strong on the back end.
Don't forget they re-signed Troy Hill.
And your boy Troy Hill. I mean, there's no better number 4 corner in the NFL than Troy Hill.
In the playoffs.
Yeah, 3 games a year.
Mm-hmm.
A team with cornerback issues, however, and that leads us right to the 49ers. Richard Sherman isn't getting any younger. We saw a little bit of a decline from the career baseline even that he had with the Seahawks last year. They have a guy in Ahkello Weatherspoon now who's going to have to fight off Jason Verrett, who knows if he can stay healthy even through training camp. Tavares Moore, I think, maybe in there, and then a guy like Tim Harris. They have questions in the secondary, and that's just kind of where the tip of the iceberg starts for the 49ers on defense.
Yeah, I mean, they were one of the worst, probably the worst safety group in the NFL last year, and they didn't even address it over the course of the offseason. They just banked on the fact that, hey, these guys are young, they're going to improve. That's not always how it works, though, unfortunately. So I just don't have faith in the secondary to be good enough, while the rest of the roster, they've made big improvements. Defensive line, I think offensive, the weapons they have offensively should be, and with Jimmy Garoppolo coming back, should be a lot better, but I just don't see how they're stopping the pass at anywhere near a high level.
I think that really was their approach to the secondary. It was, we like the talent of these guys, they're all young, let's bank on them getting better in year 2, and if it works, fine, but that's a serious risk.
Yeah.
The one thing they did do to help those guys out was add some edge rush, which has been a complete, they haven't had any for years. So you had Nick Bosa, one of the best players in the entire draft. You had Dee Ford, who led all edge rushers last season in total pressures. Now, there's a lot on his shoulders to back that up again, do it more than once. But in theory, that's a lot of edge rush to add to DeForest Buckner, who's still one of the better interior pass rushers in the NFL. There should be some serious pass rush now to try and help that secondary at least improve.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, we went into the offseason saying edge rush, major, I mean, one of the biggest needs of the entire NFL. The back 7, having Bosa and Ford with DeForest Buckner is a nice combination there. We'll see if that can protect the secondary a little bit, or at least scare offenses into throwing the ball a little bit shorter. So you just have to worry about maybe making the tackle in front of you rather than covering for 3 seconds. So I think that's where their mentality is right now.
Throwing the ball shorter, we have an offense led by Kyle Shanahan. Jimmy Garoppolo comes back. They have a stable of running backs. They gave all that money to Jarrett McKinnon. They have a guy that we like, Matt Breida. is there a running back that we like, or is there an admirable quality to that running attack that they think they have out there?
I can't even believe you're asking us about running backs.
I have to.
What do we do?
Well, Tevin Coleman was in that. It was,
Tevin Coleman's a good fit for this team.
He was a good receiving threat back in Atlanta, and I think
they all are. I mean, they've got the right kind of running back for the system. They've got these speed guys that work well in that outside zone that can all be a valuable part of the passing game, but it won't matter if they don't have any wide receivers, which is their biggest issue.
But it's a fascinating group of guys because you had George Kittle at tight end, who had one of the best tight end seasons we've ever seen, becoming one of the best young tight ends in the NFL, but drafting Deebo Samuel in the second round, a route runner, a guy that can win from the slot, can win outside. Dante Pettis, not a great straight line athlete, but a nifty route runner as well. They're getting, Mike, you always say it's about getting open. They're getting guys who know how to get open, to pair with Jimmy Garoppolo, who's got the nice quick release, who could throw the ball accurately to open receivers. Still have Trent Taylor as a slot threat, Marquise Goodwin as a deep threat. So it's not a flashy group of receivers, but I think when you put them up against other receiving groups that don't have big names, I'll take this group because I think there's a lot of potential there for these guys to put up some sneaky good numbers.
And if there's one offense where being strong in those kind of traditional blocking or run game positions is more important, this would be it. Having a tight end, even Kyle Juszczyk as a fullback, they use those guys in the passing game way more than other teams do. So having a mismatch problem at tight end and a fullback and a running back for this team, I think is significantly more important than it would be for just a standard conventional offense because of the system they run.
And if the 40 yards of gold taught us anything, they do have one of the faster players in the entire NFL, in Marquise Goodwin. So round it up, gonna wrap everything up here. Seattle Seahawks. Pete Carroll's 10th year out there. He's got Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is who we thought he was or could be. They have the best linebacker in the game in Bobby Wagner. So two important positions, both offense and defensively, they're covered. They do have some questions. They have to replace, and I think this is probably an underappreciated aspect of their offseason, they have to replace their number one receiver from last year. Is Tyler Lockett going to be the guy that can emerge to be number one?
Yeah, I think he will. I think he's been sort of on the precipice of that sort of being that guy there in Seattle, and now basically has to be. And I think he seamlessly replaced what Doug Baldwin did in terms of going slot heavy or the slot outside mix and do a lot of those similar things. A very good route runner. I don't think you want to take away from what he does best, though, which is deep ball and getting him down the field. You have him and DK Metcalf now. It's a lot of speed on the field for opposing defenses to deal with. I think this is going to be a run, hit you over the top sort of offense. That's the way they're built. That's what they want to do offensively. So I do think that while that isn't necessarily the best route to go in 2019, they are well set up to execute said offense.
They want to run the ball. They basically have four guards in their starting five. Add Mike Upati in there with DJ Fluker, Justin Britt, who's played pretty well at center, but has a history at guard, and then Jermaine Ifedi, who's probably better kicking in at guard.
They have assembled an all-pro 1992 offensive line. That thing would go out there and destroy defenses 20 years ago.
This is like the Matthew Stafford discussion because Stafford's I'd say a borderline top 10 quarterback, more like top 15 right now. Wilson is a clear top 10 quarterback, in that top 5 conversation. And, how do you build around those guys? Do you give them a slew of, various types of playmakers and just let them pick defenses apart, or do you build the running game and build the play action attack? That Seattle wants to run the ball. They lamented that they didn't run the ball enough last year, and they ran the ball a ton to improve by one win because of essentially other reasons. So it's going to be an interesting situation to see how much do they actually put the ball into Russell Wilson's hands, because ultimately, even if he's going to, make a few bad decisions here and there like he did last year, he's the guy that's going to win some games for you offensively.
Yeah, he'll have to learn to count on Tyler Lockett like he counted on Doug Baldwin and then some of those clutch moments. So they did bring in Gary Jennings as well, a guy we liked better than David Sills out of West Virginia, despite the touchdown totals for Sills. But I think a big thing, too, for the Seahawks and their defensive prowess this season, they have a question at safety. They have to replace, obviously, Earl Thomas. They have to replace basically the entire Legion of Boom, which they haven't been able to do yet. Shaquille Griffin took a step back. They go into it, though, they lose Frank Clark this offseason. And is L.J. Collier going to be the guy that can step in for Frank Clark?
He has to be, but I don't think he's going to come close to replacing what we saw from Frank Clark. I think I liked L.J. Collier a lot coming out, but just asking any edge rusher year one. We even saw Bradley Chubb, Harold Landry, guys we like more than LJ Collier come in, and yeah, I mean, Chubb put up good stats sack-wise, but just on a down-for-down basis, they weren't beating offensive tackles at a high level.
Yeah, it's the opposite of the Legion of Boom years right now. Questions in the secondary, don't have that slew of pass rushers that they had before. You got probably the best linebacker in the NFL in Bobby Wagner. That could be tough unless they, really scheme it up or have some guys really, really develop right now.
What's interesting about this scheme is that the Legion of Boom, I mean, they were all fantastic, but they were almost all the prototypes for their positions for this scheme.
Right.
Is there anybody left in that secondary who you would say is the prototype for the spot that they're now playing?
Well, no. There's no Earl Thomas.
Right.
There's no Richard. There's no guy that is perfect in that role.
Even compared to last year, they lost Justin Coleman, who was their best performer in the secondary a season ago. So, even from last year, it has gotten worse. So not.
But whatever about the kind of quality of the player, like the fit in that scheme isn't there anymore. None of the players left look like they belong in that cover 1, cover 3 Legion of Boom system that was so successful when they had all those prototypes and then disseminated throughout the NFL. Now there's just a bunch of guys that aren't particularly good secondary players. That's a problem. I mean, not only do you not have great players, we don't even have an identity anymore.
And strategically keep Russell Wilson healthy, because behind him is Paxton Lynch and Geno Smith now. So going forward, that's got to be paramount.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. Wrapped it up. That's the NFC West. And that's the NFC Roundtable. Appreciate it, guys.